All right, I guess that's going. Wop, wop. All right, yeah, I guess I could do my opening bit. I could do the Zenkai-Con, or I'll save the Poop Hobo. I'll just talk about Zenkai-Con. Because also the Poop Hobo is more a sad story than an interesting story.
I got opening bit also.
You got an opening bit?
Yeah.
All right, you can start with your opening bit, because I don't have a lot to say about Zenkai-Con from an opening bit
There's nothing
standpoint.
to say about Zenkai.
There's some stuff to say. I had fun. It's Monday, May 1st, 2017. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, DRM.
Are you?
Because I guess we never did a show on this in the last 12 years.
No, it can't be true.
We did. I can't find one in the database.
It can't be true.
This is the second time in recent memory one of us has said, hey, why don't we do a show on X? And the other one said, we have definitely done a show on X, and the first one agreed. And then in searching the database, there wasn't one.
There has to be.
I can't find one. If you find a show we did specifically about digital rights management, my hat is off to you, and I will eat my hat.
Mm-hmm. You get a lot of hats. Eat all your hats.
I'm not eating all my hats. I will eat a hat.
Which hat?
I don't know.
How about your
some sort of small chocolate.
Your leather cowboy hat that you from the RIT days.
Oh yeah, that's a good hat.
Anyway.
I like that hat.
Eat it. It's right edible. It's leathery, right?
Yeah, you'd rather have to boil it.
Sure. Boiling is fine. Just
I'd probably be better off
eat
eating that hat than eating the felt hat.
That's what I'm saying. Anyway, so remember the last time we did a Monday show, I talked about my computer that was blue screening and how I replaced the motherboard and then it still was blue screening.
Yep, I remember that.
And I was upset. I was like, oh, why did I waste my time updating the motherboard? It wasn't actually the problem, right? And I was like, oh, well, it could have, what was it? Was it this? Was it that? So I had two SSDs in my computer. The old one, which is the first SSD I ever bought. It's like maybe 4 years old, something like that. 4 or 5 years old. I don't know. It's old. The old one, and then there's a newer one that I have that I bought more recently. That's the Samsung one that's better, right?
Yep.
So that old one is now relegated to just being like the scratch drive, right?
That's what I've been doing with my old 32 gigabyte SSD.
So it's only used when I'm like using Adobe stuff. Otherwise, it's not being used at all. It's just in there with no data being written to.
Yep.
Or from it whatsoever.
So I've noticed because I have my giant like multi-terabyte, like many terabyte drive. I set it up to where only Adobe stuff and static media is on it.
Anyway.
So it literally, if I ever like start an Adobe project, I hear that drive spin up.
The point is, this old SSD that was in there, of the two SSDs I had, I unplugged it because, number one, I hardly use it except when I'm Adobe-ing, so it doesn't matter if it's unplugged too much. And B, was it really the cause of blue screens? Well, I can tell you, since unplugging it 2+ weeks ago, I have had 0 blue screens.
I would not have predicted that outcome.
This is new to me, right? How can an SSD, a storage drive, that is merely plugged into a computer, that is not being used, no data written to or from it, how can that cause blue screens so frequently while the computer is doing other unrelated things, not even accessing that drive? That could make sense if, say, the SATA controller on the board was busted. That might cause blue screens, but we changed motherboards.
Yeah.
And we were having blue screens on both of them. It would make sense if the GPU is causing blue screens. And these blue screens were having various error messages of all shapes and sizes, not one consistent error message.
So I got some guesses, I think, but it's all speculation.
And my RAM tests were always like, A+, your RAM is totally good. And my RAM was totally good. But I was suspect because RAM makes more sense for a blue screen.
RAM
right?
is like the primary cause of blue
RAM
screen.
stick would have made so much more sense for these random blue screens. But
so here's my guess, because you got to use it's process of elimination at this point.
Since that old busted SSD has been removed, no blue screens. I should put it in someone's computer and see if it makes blue screens.
So it's not data coming on or off of that drive, obviously. And it's probably not something like physical on the motherboard, because what are the odds you have two motherboards?
Two motherboards are the same, right?
So either that drive, because even though you're not accessing it, the SATA controller still like initializes it or whatever. like on
But
the hardware
why would
level.
it crash just like sometimes for a long time, sometimes a short time?
So maybe if it has an internal problem where occasionally it'll send spurious voltages up that SATA cable.
I don't
Like,
could be.
That's already a pretty like esoteric, impossible to troubleshoot problem.
But shouldn't it not like?
No, as soon
Shouldn't
as
there
you
be
got
some
stray
sort of fault?
voltages.
There should be some fault detection and protection. There should be some protection in the motherboard.
Yeah, so
and
there
should
is, but
also
not
be
everywhere.
fault protection in the code to say, hey, don't crash when that happens.
No, but you can't put that everywhere because like putting voltage protection, one, can cause problems with bandwidth, especially in like high speed things.
Fuses.
Yeah,
They're an
fuses.
old invention.
Fuses introduce latency and trouble depending on how they could be
I'm just
implemented.
saying.
They're also big. Generally, you only protect like the power in places where you're likely to get weird power situations.
Like from the power supply.
Yeah, but not from like a SATA cable plugged into a hard drive.
I don't know. It could have been also maybe on the power.
Yeah, the
cable
other
on
thing
the-
could be it might have a problem where it over and under draws or does something weird, causing the PSU to have a momentary fault that then causes the system to get unstable. Those are both stretches. That's weird. We should play. You know what? I got a couple extra computers. Give me the drive. I'll just plug it into my HTPC out there and see if it blue screens.
All right, well, just you got to keep running for a while, see what happens.
Oh yeah, well so
Because
I-
the thing is, the drive never misbehaved. Every time I wrote data to it, it worked. Every time
not
I
like that drive
read
you had in
data from it-
RIT that had that one sector where you'd hear it like have a platter crash.
Well, it's an SSD. That can't happen.
Yeah, but that you had an old hard
But yeah,
drive
it-
that
it's-
you just
when
had to
you're
leave a big
using-
file covering
When you are
that
using
spot.
this drive, it appears to be a perfectly functioning 128 gigabyte SSD, and it did not cause blue screens until, whenever.
Oh my God, Linkigi in the chat had a laptop hard drive that was like plug and play. You could unplug it, an external one.
Mm-hmm.
He would get a blue screen reliably about an hour after he unplugged it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's kind of an old motherboard in terms of like it's from an era.
Right.
Maybe SATA controllers were a little less robust back then.
Well, I mean, all I'm saying is this drive, this SSD, is a Corsair brand SSD from way back. So I can't imagine this will be a problem for anyone buying new SSDs, and you're only buying Samsung ones these days, right? So
Yep.
you're not, or Intel ones, which are fine but slower.
Because I had an SSD go through the traditional failure recently. My old 2009 laptop, I had to replace its, one SSD that I paid a lot of money for in 2009.
Yeah, that drive was not cheap when I bought it. And whatever.
Yeah, this old 32 gig SSD just like Windows, like I go to play a video at a con, and then Windows is just like some libraries are missing. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. I'll just use VLC. I run VLC, and VLC complains about some DLL files having a problem. And a little bit more investigation, I think half that file system had single bit errors, like just littered throughout it.
ScanDisk.
Yeah, and ScanDisk crashed.
Uh-oh.
I tried it again, ScanDisk crashed,
Uh-oh.
and then I gave up and I just bought a new hard drive. And
FSCK.
Yep. And once I put the new hard drive in, one, modern SSDs are way faster than old SSDs.
Yes.
And two, the laptop is
This
like new.
SSD, even though it's old, was still 6 gigabit per second SSD. It was,
Yeah, but while they have 6 gigabit, they use that standard. Old SSDs tend to actually have pretty low or pretty high latency compared to what modern SSDs do.
Like I expect an SSD to fail in the way an SSD fails, where it starts running out of sectors.
Yeah,
I don't
and then you start
I
running
don't
into-
expect it to randomly blue screen your computer with no indications that it was the SSD's fault in any of the error messages anywhere.
So what's interesting is in old computers, like I think the 486 was the end of this era, where like when I bought my first 486, my family bought one, it came with a manual, and the manual actually even went down to voltages and pinouts and like motherboard diagrams.
Yeah, that's a holdover because before then you'd be buying computers like Coleco's, not Coleco's, Radio Shack Coco 2,
Yep.
or a Tandy something, or even an
You'd have-
Apple IIs and Amigas. They all came with those things. Even the stereo that I bought, it was like it was like a piece of furniture that had 2 giant speakers and a turntable and dual cassette decks for dubbing or whatever. That came with a complete circuit diagram.
Yeah.
It was a thing, all electronics that
But
you
you also
bought
be able to-
for
so-
a long, up until early mid 90s, every time you bought some piece of electronics, it came with like a complete circuit diagram. That
And-
was just a thing.
The physicality of what you were doing with electricity in older computers was a lot simpler. Like when I was at RIT, this wasn't that long ago, right? one of the early classes we took that was actually interesting was all about signal processing. And we spent a lot of time learning about all the different networking standards and like buses, like computer buses, and the
That
actual
token ring.
physical electrical signaling. Like, here is the kind of wave, like, differential Manchester or whatever. What is used in modern networking is so much more complicated than that stuff that all of that knowledge is literally worthless today.
But then, gigabit Ethernet isn't just the same thing, only faster.
No. So, yeah, like Manchester encoding is pretty...
That was from the 10 megabit days, right?
Yeah. And actually, like, we're old enough at RIT, literally used 10 base 2
Yeah.
and token ring, so...
I didn't use token ring.
I used token ring.
We used 10 and 100, but now we're using gigabit.
Yeah, you didn't use the 10 base 2 with the vampire clamps? Or no, 10 base 5, there was the one with the thick coax cable. You shove these vampire clamps in to make basically a ghetto hub.
No.
And then the other one was the T's. We get the T junctions in the back of each computer. That's 10 base 2.
Okay.
The T's. You like twist it in, and then you got to have a terminator on that last computer.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, that stuff's all obsolete. But my point is that back then, in those classes I took, we could literally plug oscilloscopes or other devices into network cables, and by looking at waveforms and using like voltimeters, troubleshoot problems. I don't think it's feasible to do that kind of troubleshooting on modern computers.
It's too much data.
Yeah. And the kind of equipment you would need that would be sensitive enough is probably out of the realm. Like, flukes are not even cheap, and modern flukes are probably way more expensive even. Good times. So I was this weekend at ZenkaiCon. I did 3 panels. So if any of you are here because you saw those panels, a lot of people were really, that's not an audience that typically sees our stuff. Most of the people in these mostly full rooms, no idea who I was. And only one person walked out, and I think they had to go to the bathroom based on their body language. So it was a good time, but I got to tell you, ZenkaiCon is great, and I have a lot of fun there. Independent of that, Lancaster got a Lancaster.
That's why I don't go there.
It is the only city I have been to in my entire life where
City.
it's just technically a city.
Village.
People on the street, townies, will come up to strangers and have adversarial interactions with them, but they are not actually panhandling. They're just being aggressive over nothing. I had people just like bothering us, and like random people will come up to you and just say unintelligible things to you regularly, but none of them are panhandling. They're just townies living there, accosting strangers who came to town.
What did they say?
So
So you're just walking down the street and someone comes
people
over.
walk up to you, and some of them would just ask like, "What's going on with the freak show? What's up with all the costume weirdos?" But some of them would just say gibberish. Like, I did not understand what a lot of them
Well,
said.
isn't that just crazy Pennsylvania Sticks accent?
If you know what it might be? My guess, not to be.
Like, hey, can I get a glass of water? Or like, what did you say?
If I had to guess, to paraphrase someone else who was in our group, the spice must flow. So I suspect it might have been some spice and or meth that was going on.
That is a problem in much of this country.
A lot of the people who are bothering.
People keep talking about how this meth is a problem, and I don't want to talk too long about this because it's Monday. But
Yeah.
let me just say, isn't that a problem that solves itself? Really?
No, because it doesn't. So it takes too long to have that super dark timeline outcome that you're alluding to.
Oh, then maybe I should get it on this joint. I get a long time before it causes.
Also, like, meth is just an amphetamine, and amphetamines have their own problems. There's a separate problem of unclean meth made in bathtubs or whatever. But
Well, I mean, we have that problem with cheese too. So
yeah, but in general,
should I avoid cheese?
in general, stimulants like that have a lot of positive, by some definitions, effects, and a lot of negative, by all definitions, effects. So, like, during World War II, like, both us and the Germans and a lot of the armies just gave meth to soldiers, like, all the time.
If he made a YouTube video of doing meth, was that not allowed?
I do not want to try crystal meth.
But you were the one who was going to try it. I'm not
I'm not trying crystal
I
meth.
don't even drink alcohol. You're the one who has to do the math. Why would I do it?
But otherwise, the con was great. But there was a moment on Friday night. It was like midnight, and we went to have some drinks. We're hanging out. So all of us are walking back to our hotel, which is like we're just like north of the train station. So we're walking through town, and we see these 2 guys, and they see us, and they yell, "Hey!" and start running at us.
Uh-oh.
So we brace for impact, and then they pull up, and they're just like, the most stereotypical, like, live in Philly dudes. And the discourse we had with them boiled down to, yo, you look like you're from around here. Where the fuck can a man get some food in this country-ass town?
Mm-hmm.
And
Why were they in that country-ass town?
It was their first Zenkai-Con.
Why were they in Zenkai-Con?
Because Zenkai-Con's pretty fun. I don't know why you're so down on Zenkai-Con. I played more tabletop games with quality people at this Zenkai-Con than I did at the last PAX South.
Sure.
We just did nothing but play
Because there's
awesome
nothing
board
else
games.
to do. At PAX South, you got other shit to do.
Like what? What did you do at PAX South other than play tabletop games in
Did
free play?
panel,
Other than running your panel, which I also did.
ate food, walked around the expo hall, played
Yeah.
some games that weren't tabletop games.
Like what? Name one.
Forget the name.
Yeah, that game. I remember that game. That
yeah,
game's
that
pretty
one.
good.
Yeah,
That's a
one.
good game.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Zenkai-Con next
I
year.
went to watch that Hearthstone tournament.
Also, apparently, now that PAX has negotiated to be in the Philly Convention Center, I learned from a couple people, because I didn't know a lot about that convention center
we
at
went
all.
there.
Yeah,
We
but
were
I don't
in
know a
that
lot about it.
building.
Like, I know a lot about the BCEC and the BCC and the Heinz, just because, like, you know, for various research. I never knew shit about the Philly Convention Center, but apparently the
The
reason
building
nothing...
you've been in.
Yeah, but why would I have studied it?
I'm just saying.
You want to run a convention there?
No.
So apparently the reason no one ran conventions there was that the unions would basically just say no. Like that convention center was notorious for having the worst possible union interactions you could have.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently you had to negotiate with 5 separate unions who all had required hours and overtime and everything to do anything in that convention center. And that's why nothing is really there.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently they consolidated that, and now you only have to negotiate with one union. And some people have implied to me that it might have been because PAX sort of like came in with money and said, listen, guys. So it's not really clear what happened, but maybe Zenkai-Con could move into that convention center. Be in downtown, grow, because they're already outgrowing the shockingly big convention center in Lancaster. Like, since you've been to Zenkai-Con in a few years,
Did
right?
it make it bigger?
It is way big
Wasn't it
now.
just a Marriott hotel when I was there?
No, it's in a full-on convention center, like a pretty big one.
No. When I was there, it
I
was
mean,
in-
it's
it was
connected
in-
to the
it was in, like,
Marriott,
the Marriott.
But it has a whole bunch of big spaces. It's just completely full. Every hotel in the whole city was full. And in fact,
That's not a lot of hotels.
when we got to our days in, there was a line of people waiting to check in, and they were all having drama and trouble.
Blazing at the daisy.
It looks like most of them were at the wrong days in because they were kids and they didn't know how to make hotel reservations. And the rest of them were trying to get a hotel in town because they drove to town, not just expecting they could get a hotel room. And literally every hotel in the entire city was sold out, and they were getting desperate. So later that night, our hotel put up a no vacancy sign. It was spelled wrong, so no vacancy.
Ah.
That hotel was the 3rd worst hotel I've ever slept at in my life, by the way. Do not ever
was it
sleep.
worse than the Chai Lai Motor Inn?
No, it is the 3rd worst. The Chai Lai Motor Inn is the 2nd worst, and the family inn I stayed at, like 80 miles outside of Gatlinburg, Tennessee, is probably the worst.
Chai Lai Motor Inn. I wonder if it's still there.
The family inn, the door did not lock.
The Chai Lai might be the worst.
We pushed a couch up to the door to lock the door
Listen,
while we
you can
slept
always
for the
go
night.
stay in one of those like nightmare cockroach bedbug places in Times Square area for one night. You can just walk over and stay there.
Yeah, it's only like $100 a night too.
Yeah.
So you want to read what might be the whitest article anyone's ever written on the internet? This like white tech bro dude blogger wrote a whole article about his adventure booking a room in that hotel and spending the night and how horrifying it was. And it is just the dumbest article you will ever read. But yeah, it's Monday. It's May Day too. So happy 8-hour days, workers' rights and such. But Amazon.
Labor.
Yeah. Amazon
We
actually
also have
has
Labor Day. Why we need 2 days?
Yeah.
Labor Day is fucking 5 days a week.
May Day covers a lot of things though.
Sure.
But
It's the 1st of May.
yeah, it's
1st
early
of
May. All the fun things between now and May 5th is all the fun biz.
You know what starts today?
Gatlinburg Family Inn has some A+ meth.
Yeah.
See? You get enough people in that chat. So anyway, in actual tech news, because we wasted like 20 minutes talking about this, Amazon announced a service that's actually pretty important, I think, to the ecosystem of the internet, because it's hard to do this if you don't pay someone to do it for you. But basically, Amazon launched something called self-service marketplace for subscription providers. And it's basically subscribe with Amazon. So if you sell a thing that is a technology subscription, like Adobe Creative Cloud would be an example, or access to a website that does a thing, or an app, or a game, or anything like that, then you can sell that just in Amazon's store,
Right.
and they'll just handle it for you.
This is a thing where there's a lot of people have this business model now of subscription selling, right? Subscribe to Netflix, subscribe to a box of stuff that comes in the mail every month, right?
Yep.
A lot of people are using the subscribe business model, but everyone who does it has to implement it that's like code the same code over and over again. So it's like if you want to do a subscription thing, you have to write this code that everyone's already written. There's no service that just like offers it to you.
Now, all the code really has to
But
do
now
is interface with payment processors,
Yep.
take customer info,
Mhm.
and somehow provide an authentication token of some kind to the actual service.
Yep. So now Amazon made a thing, so you don't have to write this code anymore. You can just use their thing.
And more importantly, it means that your thing is just in Amazon's marketplace. Like, if there wasn't Patreon and GeekNights was for money, which, don't worry, that will never happen, we could be
No.
like, buy GeekNights for $1 a month on Amazon.
Mhm.
And like I was looking at the docs and how it works, and I think this is going to actually hurt some of the services like Patreon that many people are using to do this kind of thing if those
No,
people
it's
are
not
companies.
It's not accessible to Patreon's for individual
Yeah,
people.
this
right?
is well, in terms of what you need to be able to bring to the table, you have to be a step up in that you probably need to be a company, and more importantly, you need to have the development expertise to be able to use the service because it's going to let you set up that authentication token. Like, you still need to make that all happen
Which
on the
is
other
still
side.
easier than developing
Yeah.
your
So
own.
I think there will be you know what would be a good place for this? Certain video games that are on Patreon right now to give you access to the video game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the use case here. The question, what I don't know, is how much of a vig Amazon's taking compared to other services. I didn't dig into that much detail.
They always take.
Yeah, of course they take.
They
But
take
they take and take and take. Pay attention to this.
rent seeking.
Because if this ecosystem, I suspect, is going to be the primary subscription ecosystem in a relatively short amount of time, because the reality is people trust Amazon, and even though there are other e-commerce platforms, lay people do not trust them because they aren't Amazon. And that's just the way it is. Real hard to compete with Amazon. Like Seamless and Grubhub, there's a reason it's so hard to compete with them, because even though they don't offer the best services, they already exist and people have heard of them.
Mm.
Anyway, in some other tech news that's actually a big deal and is going to be a bigger deal later, so we're not going to talk about it in too much depth. But Tinder, that website to get your fucking on.
Yep. It's not even a website. I'm pretty sure it's just an app.
Is it just an app?
I don't think you can swipe on the web. I think you can only swipe with
Well,
the
I
app.
saw someone made an app that will auto swipe through their API.
All right.
So, but essentially, another company used they used their API to get all the photos that people have uploaded into Tinder, which
Yeah.
you can just pull out of the API. I mean,
Yeah.
stuff's just public, essentially. And they used it to make a data set for facial recognition.
Yeah, I mean, someone put out free photos that are all squares. They're all, it's like,
So,
oh, thanks.
You can read the
You know
article,
that they're all people's faces.
because I don't want to go in too much depth,
You
because
don't have
on
to do
one
that
hand,
on your own.
data sets are one of the like the last frontiers of monetizing in late capitalism in terms of technology right now. Like on Wall Street, pretty much everywhere, selling data or being a platform are like the places you can still make money without having to do something like that no one's ever done before. Like, there's a lot of money in making data sets, using data sets, and a data set like this for like generating machine learning algorithms or doing anything with facial recognition, super, super, super valuable and useful, and arguably violates the terms of service of the website the data was gotten from.
Yeah.
And the whole can of worms that gets opened is, say there's a website that has information on it. Copyright means I can't take that information and just redistribute it without a license. That's already covered. But what if I take that information and use it myself, but don't provide that information to other people. I just provide information I generated from that information.
I mean, the only reason we know they scraped Tinder is because someone said so. If they just kept their mouth shut, it would have just been like, hey, we have a facial recognition thing. No one would have known where the hell they got it from. It's only because they opened their big fat mouth. And this is the same thing I say to a lot of other people is like, a lot of people make stuff and they upload it to YouTube and it gets taken down. Or like,
Yep.
people.
The dude who made it, Stuart Coliani, released it under a public domain Creative
Right.
Commons license.
A lot of people will like make there was like a 3D Chrono Trigger people were making.
Yep.
And some other people making a Super Metroid, a Metroid 2 remake, and these things get taken down, and it's like assholes. When you make something and you're gonna put it out there, and there's something about it that is gonna stop it somehow because you got your data from somewhere shady,
Yep.
or you're violating some copyright or something.
While you're generating buzz,
Don't
call it Trono Brigger or something.
Don't take any fucking credit for it, so no one knows who the hell you are. And just put it up on BitTorrent completely anonymously, and don't say where it came from, and no one will be able to fucking stop you. If I scraped Tinder to make some database, I would have just put it anonymously onto BitTorrent and be like, ta-da, mysteriously, this database appeared out of nowhere. I don't know where it came from, and now everyone has it. If you do it where you tell everyone, now there's going to be a big ruckus.
But it's not only that. The reason this could, like, I don't want to talk about this too much, is that there are so many interesting issues you could talk about based on this one story. Like, for example, right now, I'm looking at information in a web browser because that information is publicly available on the internet. If a website has terms of service for use, but does not have accounts and does not block people from accessing it, are you actually bound to those terms of service? Especially
Tinder does have accounts, though.
But say you don't.
Okay.
Especially if you hit a website with a browser, meaning, you know, some sort of scraper,
Curl.
that doesn't actually read the footer of the page that says it has terms of service, so you'd never even encountered them. If I trespass on some land and I didn't actually pass any no trespassing signs at any point because they didn't put them on that side of the property, though all those questions are largely unanswerable even by lawyers right now. And
They've been unanswerable for a long time.
And based on the way Congress is going, I suspect no laws will be passed in the next 10 or 20 years to deal with this stuff. So the upside is, if you use Tinder, your photo is part of this public domain data set of people who use Tinder.
We always say this anyway. Anything that you upload to the internet, anything that you put on a device, any data you put on any sort of electronic thing that is connected to the internet, even if you check private, only share with my friends, direct message only, it doesn't matter. You have effectively shared that thing with the entire human race.
Let's put it simply. There are no sharing controls except client-side encryption. That is the only way you can control data you send.
And even then, if I send something to RIM,
and you can't trust me.
I have to trust RIM not to share it with the entire world on purpose or by accident. You know, now that image is unencrypted on RIM's phone, who knows where it's going to go next, right?
Yep.
The only way, if I take, say, a photo and I want it to be absolutely private, I must, A, keep it in my house only on non-internet connected mediums. And that is it.
And the last news, surprisingly, multiple people, I guess, because
gobble.
Yeah, everyone knows that I used to spend a lot of time in Turkey, so because that's not a super common thing to do, I guess. So a lot of people.
I don't think it's even before it was not the most visited country.
3 different people messaged me to tell me about this, or as it happened. At ZenkaiCon, 2 different people, when I ran into them because I hadn't seen them in a while, they're like, "Oh yeah, did you hear about Turkey?" And I was like,
"Tastes good. I heard about it."
A lot of things are going on with Turkey. One thing in particular, and like, oh, they blocked Wikipedia. So yes, to all of you out there, I'm aware that this happened. And the irony, I mean, the fact that Wikipedia is blocked in Turkey, I don't want to say it's not news, because it is news and it's a bad thing, but it is probably the least bad news that has come out of Turkey in the last several weeks.
It's a bad news, but of the bad news, it is the least one.
I mean, if you're not familiar, Turkey basically voted in a scam election to make Erdogan effectively the Chancellor of Germany.
Oh, is that how you pronounce his name? I thought it was Edrogan.
It's Turkish is interesting in that the letters like pronunciation and conjugation are 100% regular.
Mm-hmm.
See, now when you learn like Spanish or French, like they teach you rules for conjugation
I thought
and rules of pronunciation.
My pronunciation was way more Marduk Gardakan
Gardakan.
than yours was.
Yeah, the way that.
Now I'm disappointed. He's like, I mean, he's already not cool, but now he's even less cool.
So you want to learn
If
how
you're
to.
gonna be evil, at least be cool evil.
Here's how you pronounce Turkish words. You look up a few rules, but basically learn how to pronounce all the vowels and look up the list of consonants that are pronounced. And any consonant that's not on that list, just kind of swallow it as you say the word.
Mm-hmm.
So like yatim, just kind of like swallow the end, and you'll sound close enough. Like people
Alright.
will get you.
Anyway,
So
the funniest thing is that they blocked Wikipedia, and perhaps one of the reasons they blocked Wikipedia is for pages like this, which are
the
about
2017 block of Wikipedia in Turkey is literally on Wikipedia.
There's a Wikipedia page about Wikipedia being blocked in Turkey. And I was saying, like, hey, you know, I guess it's not as bad as the Great Firewall of China. I'm pretty sure they don't allow Wikipedia either.
Well, they're making their own Wikipedia.
Sure, that's going to work out great for them. But, like, if I don't have Wikipedia, that's like I could survive, but that's pretty close to not having water.
Well,
that's real bad.
Without Wikipedia, like
I don't know anything.
So yeah,
What do I know?
If I have the internet and Wikipedia, I can know basic stuff about everything. If I have the internet but not Wikipedia, how is Babby formed is the best you're gonna get about most
Like,
topics.
what the fuck? I don't know shit.
Like when we were earlier, we were like, why don't we do a show about crabs? And I realized that without Wikipedia, I don't know fucking anything
Right.
about crabs.
And my first thought was actually a stupid thought, which was, oh, go to the library and get like a tiny book about crabs. That's like one of those, you know, ones meant for kids or something. But
Alright.
but like, you know, the kind you would do a book report with, so you'd actually get more information about crabs. Than
That's
you would
what you'd
need.
have to do.
But then I was like, wait a minute, I could just read the Wikipedia page about crabs right about now and know everything there is to know.
Yeah, without Wikipedia, I don't know stuff anymore.
You know, it used to be that every year during holiday times, Wikipedia posts that thing on all the pages like, give us money. Oh my gosh.
I give the money now.
And I guess enough people give the money to keep them alive because they're still there. I switched to giving the monthly monies.
Oh.
Obviously less monthly money, right? But
Maybe you're paying for the whole thing.
maybe. But it's like that way, it's like I don't have to remember to do it, you know, at the end of the year. Like, did I do
Yep.
it already this year? I don't remember. Nope, monthly monies to keep that Wikipedia going.
It's just interesting. I'm curious out there. This is like a food for thought for you guys out there, the listener. How often do you actually go to Wikipedia, and do you think about using
What
it? Like,
percentage of your Google searches result with success on a Wikipedia page?
yep.
And that's where you got what you want.
Because the way my life goes is anytime I'm in any conversation and someone brings something up and I don't know enough about that thing to engage with them, that day I just read the Wikipedia page about whatever that thing is.
I
Just
think
so I
about,
have-
I think about half of my Google searches are wiki space something, so that I know that I'm going to basically saying, give me the Wikipedia page for this, Google.
Because the next answer is going to be some Yahoo Answers bullshit, and then after that it's down into Urban Dictionary.
Yep. Well, sometimes Urban Dictionary is what you want.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell does this mean?
I've used Urban Dictionary in that capacity many a time because I'm a white dude in my 30s.
That's right.
All right. What was my thing today? All right.
Oh, Did you RSVP for that wedding?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Are you going?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's gonna be a fun wedding, I think. I don't think I'm gonna go to a hotel though, because
The hotel's sold out anyway.
Yeah, so it's right by the train station where Emily works.
Okay.
So we could just, so we can just take the train station up. I might rent a car from the train station just for the day, or I'll trick one of your relatives into driving us. to the
I'm
train
sure,
station.
whatever.
But no, I'm totally going to that wedding.
Mm.
And I
'Cause
actually
my mom was like, they didn't RSVP,
Yeah,
and
they
I'm
did.
like, okay.
I RSVP'd like 5 days ago. Like I didn't do it immediately
Fine.
because there was a chance I would have been out of the country, and I had to make sure. But
Mm.
all
Man.
right. Your thing of the day. Yep. What? We're doing the show live, so it's sometime in May toward the end. But anyway, things of the day. I just stumbled upon this YouTube show randomly.
What is my
It's
thing?
old. It's from like 2007. And I can't believe I haven't found this. Like I never ran into this before because it's up my alley in a lot of ways.
This matches up with one of our things. It's like, you know, sometimes you have a thing with your group of people, like an inside joke or,
Yup.
you know, some story that's told often or, you know, like a Like, there's certain things, just things you have, I don't know what to call them, but like, and then you discover another separate
They're like
group of people.
local memes.
Right. And they have the same or similar thing to what you have. And somehow you had this connection with these other people that you didn't even know.
Like you both make the same kind of joke about a specific kind of board game.
Yep.
So this is a show you can watch called Cautionary Tales of Swords. This is episode 1. Quote, in this episode, honey, I killed our son, and swords will cut your fucking hands off.
That's true.
All the show is a dude with an eye patch answering viewer mail about swords and cautionary skits explaining why don't ever own swords. Swords are stupid. They will fucking cut you. Never own swords.
Yeah,
and there are many episodes.
Yeah, when you're in the
this.
kitchen with a knife, like you're cautious. Like you're like, ooh, this is dangerous. I must respect this blade and not cut myself. Like people don't hold swords that often, and even nerds who hold swords more often than normal people, but still not that often. A sword is a fucking giant ass knife, especially like a Japanese one. Holy shit, it's a huge knife. It is so dangerous. Don't fuck around with them. But most of the time when we're talking about swords, we're talking about the dangers of spending all your money on them.
Yep.
Which, if I had money when I was, say, in high school or middle school, I would have spent it on too many swords.
Yep.
Thankfully, I did not do that. This is our sword thing, right? It's like we have this sword, like don't buy swords thing, and this other group of people who make these YouTube videos, they have their don't buy swords thing. So we have a connection with them.
Do not buy swords.
So
they will cut you.
So you know the old trick where like you make it look like you took your thumb off, right? Like this.
Oh yeah.
I'm not even doing it that
the
well.
Stupid human trick.
Like, how well am I doing it? Poorly.
You're doing it okay, except I can see your thumb bent backwards.
I'm bad at it, right? Anyway.
I can't even see myself in the video.
Right. The point is, it's an old trick. No one gets fooled by that, right? Unless you're like a little kid. But this guy on YouTube, I didn't even know you could push this trick to such limits. I have to go frame by frame to see how he even does the last part. I mean, I got an idea, but it's like,
I only
wow,
watched it once, and he just moves real quick.
He pushes this trick. He has practiced this way too much, and it's like, goddamn, I would not be surprised if he legit had, like, either crazy fingers that like flex in improbable ways, or literally actual fake fingers that are hyper realistic or something.
I mean, as a kid, I got a magic set, like one of those box magic sets kids get, and it came with a fake thumb and a fake finger.
Yeah, mine also came with like this pink rubbery finger.
Pink rubber things.
That's obviously fake, and you could do no magic with it.
Yeah, you know what I used it for? I'd cover it in blood and throw it at people instead of using it in a magic trick.
Yeah, it's
in fact,
it's a Halloween decoration, not a
magic trick I did with it that's kind of relevant to my thing of the day. It was a magic trick that I just used to scare my grandparents, where I'd use that finger and I'd act like I'm doing this complicated knife trick, and then I'd accidentally cut my thumb off and have blood spray everywhere.
Yeah, that's a Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
That's how they do.
But this is only 16 seconds long, and you might think, like, how far can they push this trick in 16 seconds? It's pretty good.
I think you could... The 16 seconds you spent listening to us is way more wasted than the 16 seconds you can spend watching this video.
Number 5 on trending. Is this trending or something right now?
I don't know.
I think people are seeing this. Maybe that's how did you find this?
I don't know.
You don't know? It just came in?
I read a lot of internet every day.
Yep.
You know how much internet I read?
There was just a study that was released today saying that the average white-collar worker in the United States consumes 12 hours of content per day on average.
I don't think I do that much because I'm only at work for 8 hours. So that would not be possible. You got to subtract the time I'm working, sleeping, and eating also from that 8 hours. And then when I'm at home, definitely not 4 hours. Unless you count, I mean, playing games doesn't count as internet content, right?
It counts as consuming media, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends what you count, right? If I'm reading comics in bed, does that count?
Let's see. Thanks to multitasking. Oh, so people might have 2 media streams on at the same time. Only half
I don't do that.
attention.
I don't do that either.
I do that occasionally, but only when the task I'm doing is rote.
I'm only doing one at a time. Oh wait, does it count if I have music playing while reading a web page?
I don't know. I did not read the article.
Yeah.
Because you're /.
Right.
I'm going to read the article.
Anyway.
In the meta moment, the book is Frank Herbert's Dune. Don't even talk to us until I beat Ganon, which is coming along.
I could go beat Ganon. I could just go to Goron Land, do that dungeon.
I'm in Goron Land right now. There's good stuff in
I
there.
have not even entered Goron Land ever on purpose. and I'm cleaning up shrines and
Yup.
quests and doing all kinds of stuff everywhere else.
I'm mostly
upgrading armors. I'm getting armors I didn't even know existed.
I'm doing two things. I'm hunting Lionel.
I got all the rubber armor, all the climbing armor, I got everything.
I'm hunting Lionel, and I am forming an entirely new town.
Yeah, I got to figure out the town thing. I heard rumors about that, but like
Someone hinted at me the start of that whole saga.
I don't even know where the start is.
So
but
remember how I said you can buy a house?
Yeah, I didn't.
If you buy that house, the builders dealing with that house are free to go off and do their shit.
Oh, I didn't buy the house because I'm saving my money for other stuff first.
I got like
I found
9,000 rupees, so whatever.
Well, I spend my rupees upgrading some stuff, but buying some armors. But I'm going to next thing I'm spending rupees on is I found a fairy who upgrades horses.
What?
Yep.
What?
There's a fairy fountain that's a 3,000 rupee fairy fountain that I have not opened yet.
What?
And it's for horses. The horse fairy fountain. I got all 4 regular fairy fountains, but there's a horse fairy
I've
fountain.
only got 2 fairy fountains actually, despite having.
Oh, you can't upgrade your armors to the 4th level.
No,
then.
I can't.
I got 4 fairy fountains, and the 4th one costs 10,000 rupees.
Fuck.
But I got the horse fairy fountain, but I need the 3,000 rupees to open it.
I'm way more excited about the horse fairy than I am about the. Is it actually a giant, like, sexy horse who comes out
I
of the
haven't
fountain?
opened it because I need 3,000 rupees.
If that fairy does not have a horse head, I'm gonna be legit disappointed.
I'm just saying.
It's gotta have a horse head. Otherwise, I was just at Zenkai Con. We did 3 panels. It was super fun. I guess the next con we'll be at is Kineticon,
Exciting.
and then PAX Unplugged, and then PAX West,
You
and then
should-
PAX Australia.
I mean, if you're listening to this, you've already probably found us everywhere on the internet that we are, but we are on all the places of the internet that exist.
particularly YouTube.
We
We're
got-
pushing that lately.
We have many YouTubes and Twitters, and we even have Facebook, and we have fucking everything. If there's a place on the internet that people post things, we have a thing there, and we post there. So go to all the places that you use on the internet and find us, Rim and me and GeekNights, and follow all. But then don't actually watch any of the content.
Yeah. So, in other news, meaning the actual main bit, we, I guess, did a show on DRM. Never.
I don't know how.
That never happened. I feel like we did it. Like, I almost remember doing it. I feel like we've talked about. I feel like this was the primary thing I was mad about for like 8 years of my life,
Yeah.
and yet somehow we've never talked about
Well,
it.
it was a big problem then. It's still a problem, but much smaller one. So here's the deal. DRM is digital rights management. And what DRM is you have some data, and you want to give that data to somebody else. You want to make it available, and so you share it around, but you only want people to be able to read that data if they have permissions to do so. For example, I'm Adobe. I made Photoshop. Photoshop is just data.
Yep.
It's just an exe file, photoshop.exe. And people can just download the fucking thing, right? And if some one person downloads it or gets it on a CD or USB stick, they can just give it to someone else. It's just data. They can copy it.
Yep, it's just a giant number.
But they do not want people who do not pay for Photoshop to be able to use Photoshop. So they put some special code in there to make that difficult to use the Photoshop if you have not paid for it, and that is DRM. And there are many mechanisms for doing this, but the fundamental idea is that you have a thing, imagine you have a treasure chest, and the Photoshop is in the treasure chest, and it's locked. So you give out treasure chests with Photoshop inside to everybody, but only some people got keys to open it. The problem is you're also giving people the keys so they can also copy the key.
Yep. Like, here's
Because the
an
key is
example.
also data.
So DVDs and Blu-rays, right? Like,
Yep.
if you have encryption on the discs, so they can only be played in legitimate players.
So the legitimate DVD players have keys in them, and the DVDs themselves are locked treasure chests with movies inside.
but those keys.
And if you put the DVD into an illegitimate DVD player, that DVD player does not have the key, so it can only watch DVDs that are unlocked treasure chest. It can't watch ones that are locked.
Except if I buy a legit DVD player once,
The keys are in there, and I can take them out.
they might be complicated keys,
Yeah.
but they're still just keys.
It might be hard to get them out of there, but they're in there.
And
if
there's
I
an angry
figure out
nerd.
what they are.
There's an angry nerd somewhere who will get the key out of there and put it on the internet.
Right, and that's how DRM works. It's like it's never foolproof because the fundamental concept behind it is just absolutely flawed from the get-go, right?
So arguably, when we talk about DRM, the kind of DRM that pertains to subscription software does work
More so.
and also is pretty justifiable.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
mean,
have problems
I'm not
with
saying
it.
it's not justified in all cases.
But it also, the main reason it can work is that unlike most things people talk about with DRM, because they're usually talking about static media like movies or songs, when it comes to software, there's no analog hole. I can't just take a picture of my screen and now I've got a copy of Photoshop.
That's only one of the flaws of DRM, right?
Yeah.
The main flaw of DRM is the one we talked about, which is that the key is also digital, and once someone gets the key, you're giving people the lock and the key, and once they have everything, right?
Yep.
You're just making it difficult. The other flaw of DRM, specifically on media, such as a movie, it's like, okay, let's say I never figured out the key to unencrypt this DVD and it only plays my legitimate DVD player. It still has to send that video to my television. And even if they do have DRM, it's called HDCP on HDMI cables.
And that's new. It used to not exist.
So I can't record easily from the HDMI cable itself. I can't trick, right? I can still point a camera at my television and record everything. So congratulations.
In fact, my grandfather...
I can't point a camera at my monitor and record Photoshop.
So my grandfather, who is real old, was a carpenter and a cabinet maker when he was young too. And he, in the earliest days when photocopies existed, he immediately would get catalogs of carpentry and cabinet making patterns, and he would copy them and blow them up until they were big enough to just use. He was pirating that stuff in the pre-internet days.
So their DRM was pretty much make it really small so no one can see?
Yep, it's like, buy the pattern.
Here's a catalog of patterns, and it has pictures of the patterns that are really
but they're
small.
little tiny patterns.
And they want you to send them money, and they'll send you the pattern, at full size. But he just take the tiny picture of a pattern and make it bigger, and now we can see it.
But more technological, even though not that wasn't technology, we had a fancy camcorder, like a really fancy one that the family all shared.
It still took VHS tapes.
It took VHS tapes, but back then...
Full-size ones, not the small ones that you put into the full-size ones.
It was not easy to copy VHS tapes that had copy protection because there was copy protection on VHS tapes. It's this complicated analog thing that we've talked about in old episodes of GeekNights.
There's also the little piece of plastic where the legit VCR will refuse to record onto a VHS tape if that piece of plastic has been punched out. And that's a good thing because you won't accidentally overwrite the Aladdin VHS tape you bought with, say, an episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah. But that Macrovision copy protection worked only because it was a signal on the tape itself. So my grandpa took the big TV and he pointed the camcorder at the TV, and he plugged the audio inputs on the camcorder into the speaker outputs of the TV, and that is how he pirated shit. And that was legit. Like, it worked.
And then for those days, you would not be disappointed with the quality. Nowadays, you'd look at that and be like, oh my God, it's unwatchable.
Yup. But with static media, the analog hole exists no matter what. I mean, right now, like Crunchyroll or anything like that, if I want to get a clip for a panel, I just fire up OBS and record my screen. Like, it totally works. If I need audio, I can literally pipe the music that is being played from the thing, no matter how copy protected it is, through my mixer and then back into Audition.
Yeah, they've mostly given up on copy protection for music these days.
Yeah, pretty much all.
Even Apple gives you like DRM-free, AAC files or whatever.
Yep. Video is interesting because they've definitely not given up on it. And people care less because streaming services exist now.
Right.
And are pretty widely.
That's the thing, right? It's like, they made it, Spotify, Netflix, whatnot, they've made it to the point where it's easier to not pirate. That was the main thing. People were pirating these things because it was hard to get it legit. Now it's like you pay for Netflix, it's way cheap, and you can just watch everything with one button press and it plays immediately.
Yep.
Which is even easier than in Napster days where you would type it in, press enter, and then double click and it would play. This is even less steps.
Yep.
So.
And even now, I pay for music services, even though I used to pirate music, to the point that pirating music might have arguably been a distinct hobby unto itself for me.
Right, but these streaming services are still using DRM, even if you're not paying attention because you're not trying to pirate anything.
Yep.
Netflix does not want you to be able to download their show and keep a copy of it forever, right? And they remove things from Netflix sometimes, right? If you could just download things forever that were on there, that wouldn't work out too well when they're trying to remove things so you can't watch them anymore.
Now, a big example of a problem was until recently.
You would be in a situation where you pay for Netflix for 1 month, download fucking everything, right, and then cancel it. And not have
I
to keep
remember the
paying.
days of Red Octane when I got the maximum subscription plan. I rented every single PS1 game I ever wanted in my life and ran them through the Plex Store as fast as I could.
In high school, it was a gang, not a legit gang, but a gang of kids, and what they would do is they would go to Blockbuster and rent PlayStation 1 games.
Yep.
Everyone would copy them, right? And so it's cost you like $5 each, but there were like 10 people.
But there was a second component to that. Everyone's PlayStation had to have a DRM crack in the form of a mod chip.
Everyone had that. So
Yeah.
you would basically, everyone would go to Blockbuster with $5, and that would be like 10 people, but you'd basically be getting 10 PlayStation games for $5. Right? You copied them all, and then you returned them all, and then you could do it again and get 20 PlayStation games for $10. It's just like the math was so great on that. For the price of one Blockbuster rental, you got the number of friends you had times number of PlayStation games. Because everyone would make one copy of theirs, and then
so think of
copy
this.
it a whole bunch of times for everybody else.
Think about how
Plus the price of blank CDs.
Think about how old style piracy wasn't that much of an economic impact because of the physical reality of it. You know, it wasn't as easy and widespread for mass copying. And what you guys did was also pretty small scale. But when I was doing it with Red Octane, there was an economy of scale. I could get someone to mail me all those CDs as fast as I could copy them.
Right.
Because copying a PlayStation game back then, like, you had to burn that shit at 1x.
Yep.
There's a lot of reasons that it took a while.
In the olden days, right, when technology wasn't as powerful, they had other kinds of DRM. For example, you bought, say, an old video game like Star Control, right?
Yep.
And you would install, you could copy this game on floppy disks and give it to all your friends, and everyone had a copy of Star Control. But when you opened up Star Control, you typed starcon.exe, it would open up, and it'd be like, hello, what is the star located? And you had this physical star chart. It was like a spinny cardboard on a thing, and you had to. It came in the box with the game, and you just spin it around and mess with the star chart and answer the question it was giving you. Sometimes they'd ask questions like, on page whatever of the rule book, what is the 10th word on what? And it's like
Quest for Glory 2 did a really clever one.
there were so many. It's like, what are you gonna do? Photocopy the whole goddamn rule book and give it to every friend? It's
Also,
like, that's
back
a pain
then,
in the ass.
Think about this. That was an era.
Make your own star chart somehow perfectly, just like the one that came in the box.
That was an era when floppy disks and computers were widely available, but copy machines were not.
Yeah, it was much harder to
Xerox
copy.
machines are like, that stuff's
but
recent.
Rule books that came with PC games were large.
Yeah.
They were full books.
And and in those days, if you wanted to make photocopies, it's not like now where you could just go to a photocopy machine and just do it. You'd go to like a Keiko's and hand them the thing and say, here's the copies I want.
And they weren't going to do that.
They
if
would
it
run
was
the
a
machine
legit
for
book.
you. Yeah, I went in there a lot of times with D&D books, and they were like, "Nope, fuck you.
Yep.
Not helping you pirate that D&D book.
That's
I
right.
know exactly what you're doing."
I'll copy the character sheet for you.
They would not actually copy the character sheet,
Really?
even though it had a disclaimer on it saying you can copy this.
Boo.
That was a long time ago. The times have changed.
Boo. Yeah, obviously.
But Quest for Glory 2,
Download a PDF, push print.
it was this giant fold-out
Download
map.
a PDF, use it on your tablet, don't even print.
It was a giant fold-out map of the main town and all the streets. And the town is just super complicated. And if you did not have a physical copy of that map in color, the game worked fine and nothing changed. It never asked you for anything. But good luck ever fucking finding anything or ever getting anywhere in that maze. I guess you could figure it out, but it would be, imagine all three of the labyrinths in Breath of the Wild and make it about 5 times bigger than that. That's like the size of this stupid
Well,
labyrinth.
you could map it out on your own with a pencil and a paper.
Yeah,
and a
you know
graph
what?
Paper.
I feel like if someone did that, like, good on you. You're in that game.
Well, some people like doing that. You ever play Etrian Odyssey?
Yeah, I understand the appeal of that. I did not make any maps in any of the mazes I've done recently. I used a variant of the left-hand rule.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful. It is possible to design maps that have left-hand rule traps. It'll take you in loops forever.
Yep. Good maze.
Yep, that's a real good maze. If there's more than one of those traps, pro.
Pro maze.
So, yeah, DRM actually was a much more dangerous topic
Right,
earlier.
Well, the other thing,
like before GeekNights.
The other thing about DRM is, like we said, it's easily broken. So it's not like if it was not breakable, this would be a really big problem because so much of the culture of the world would sort of be trapped. And like, for preservation, for all these reasons, right? It's real. That could be very harmful, but luckily it's easily breakable, right?
Yep.
Here's the thing. In the United States, at least, the DMCA says you may not break DRM except for these specific exceptions, right? Like unlocking your phone, I think, was recently made an exception.
I think so.
But I think I'm not 100% sure. But it's like if you break DRM, even in order to do something legal, you're not violating copyright. You're just breaking DRM for some other reason. That is technically against the law to do this.
Yep. Now, Portugal might be moving down the road of fixing this. I saw an article about that a little while ago doing research for the show. But the problem still is it was way worse earlier, partly because the U.S. government, you might expect that our government's pretty bad about technology stuff, but there was this golden era from the mid-'80s through the end of the '90s, early 2000s, where both parties in our government were equally hostile to media, technology, and the internet, and were basically both pushing legislation to ruin everything forever.
Mm-hmm.
This was the era of the CBDTPA, and if you want to know how bad that law was and how dangerous it was, I remember that giant acronym to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, initialism, I guess. It's not technically an acronym.
Mm-hmm.
But that law basically said something like media must be tied to legitimate devices and can only be played on legitimate devices by law. Like a device that can play media of any kind, or even arguably a general purpose computer, was effectively banned under that law unless it had government mandated copyright controls in it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you couldn't run Linux.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of stuff.
Yep.
We've backed way away from that precipice.
That's good.
And I mean, the DMCA is kind of weak-toothed. HTTP was actually broken a long time ago. Like people have broken that, as far as I know. DCSS, CSS was broken. We've had a lot of luck breaking most of the copyright DRM enforcement regimes that have been actually dangerous to the
There's
future
just
of
less
media.
effort on breaking them lately because you don't need to, because you can get your companies are finally giving you all the content you need.
But also, fewer people are outraged about it, because back then, the outrage was, you can't do things that you do today. You'll lose access to stuff. But now, because streaming's so easy, even though the streaming ecosystem is pretty heavily locked down, like unauthorized devices can't play streams.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cache stuff. Like until recently, Netflix had no way to work if you didn't have internet connections.
Yeah.
And even now, actually, Netflix is doing a good thing, because their own content, they let you download and cache locally.
So yeah, that's partially good. But so there's still bad DRMs out there, right?
Yep.
Like the John Deere people they buy a tractor and then they cannot repair the tractor.
Can't replace the tire. You gotta get an authorized tire.
Right, and if they were to say try to repair their own tractor, they would be breaking the DRM that's in the tractor's software, and therefore it's against the law to repair the thing you own, which is why a lot of places are trying to make right to repair laws, which say regardless of any DRM bullshit, you can repair something that you buy. Right, you can't be doing this bullshit.
And
We're
you
like,
can
no,
pay
no, no.
someone else to repair it.
Right, you're not licensing that tractor. You own it. You bought it. Right, it's yours.
I mean, imagine the alternative, a world where if you buy a Chevrolet car, you can legally only get it serviced at the dealership.
You cannot legally bring it anywhere else.
Nor are you
If
allowed to open the hood.
If Chevy goes out of business, you can never repair the car ever.
And if you open the hood, you could go to jail.
Yep.
That's what it would be like. That's the danger of fully realized and effective DRM.
Mm-hmm.
But replace your car with the collected culture of mankind produced to date.
Yep. So some bad news for Netflix and others, right?
Yep.
Google and even people you normally think of as not evil, because they fight for things like net neutrality. But even Tim Berners-Lee is on the wrong side of this one. There's a thing called encrypted media something.
EME, encrypted media extensions.
Right,
I
so-
happen to have the Wikipedia page up about it.
They're basically as part of HTTP. So this is the web only, not the internet, just the web, right? The standards for the web, like HTML, right?
Yep.
CSS.
Listen to old GeekNights if you want to know the difference between the web and the internet.
But the W3C, the organization that decides what the standards for the web are going to be, which is then what people who make web browsers have to basically code to those standards to make sure that websites work on all browsers the same way. They decided, almost certainly, by a vote, and the vote can only people who can vote are rich people who can pay to be a member, like tens of thousands of dollars, to include DRM, these EME in the standards of the web. So now browsers, if they want to be standard, will have to include this DRM, which would allow, Netflix and other people to distribute DRM'd video into people with just standard web browsers, no extra software required.
Now, there
anything.
are some sound arguments on both sides.
There are indeed.
I mean, the alternative, don't say that I'm necessarily speaking for this, but one problem is that under the regime where there is no official standard, everyone rolls their own.
And everyone's using Flash or
Silverlight.
Everyone's installing some kind of garbage. They're not going to distribute their content without DRM, right?
Yep.
They're going to distribute the content with DRM, but they're going to make you install some nonsense to get the content, or you don't install the nonsense. That's
So the argument comes down. In fact, this article says exactly what the argument is. The argument comes down to the alternative is not the web abandoning DRM. It's media companies abandoning the web and going fully proprietary, which is probably true.
A lot of them have already. I mean, most people, I don't imagine, watch Netflix things on the Netflix website. They're going and using an app.
Yep.
Right.
Usually embedded into some sort of set-top device.
There's no
these
reason
days.
that app has to talk to Netflix itself, Netflix's server infrastructure via HTTP. It can talk to Netflix using any protocol that they come up with.
Yep.
So
on one hand, this is from a pure technology standpoint, this is a thing people want to do with technology, so we should have some standards so it works interoperably across platforms, across browsers. But on the other hand, the thing you're trying to do is, from an ideological standpoint, fundamentally dangerous to culture in the long run, even if it has short-term positive economic impact in light of the fact that with capitalism, it is hard to make money if you make art.
Problems. Here are the problems with this particular thing. Number one, if you just include DRM in browsers like this automatic thing, people who are currently distributing things for free might just decide it's really easy to use the standard DRM. It's built into everyone. Let's just use it. And now suddenly all these things are DRM that before were not DRM.
Yep.
Now, number two, let's say you make an open source web browser like Firefox or something. You cannot be including this DRM shit in this open source product, right? That's not going to work out. That's fundamentally against your license and such, right? You can't do this. That's a problem.
Depending on the license, of course.
Debian is not going to include a browser that has DRM in it.
Here's the quote from Wikipedia. EMA has been highly controversial because it, quote, places a necessarily proprietary component into what is otherwise an open and free software ecosystem.
Yep.
Because remember, we said
you
keys,
have to download the NVIDIA driver separately when you install some Linux.
Yeah, remember how we talked about keys before? The key, the code, whatever it is that makes this DRM happen, is still just that key, so it has to be closed source or it cannot work.
Yeah, if it was open source and just included in Firefox, you could just read the source code of Firefox and it would basically have instructions on how to break the DRM in it, which is why it won't, right?
I've decided just now I'm for this being implemented, and I have a pretty specific reason why. If we standardize on one way of doing it in DRM, you crack one key to crack the world.
Sadly, this DRM does not work that way. It has many keys.
You'd have to fundamentally break its system.
Yeah, I don't think this is designed this system was made by Google, Netflix, etc.
Yep.
It's a whole team effort. It's going to be very, very hard for you to do that.
Well, the other trouble is that the reason a lot of other...
I do not think it is so fundamentally flawed. I think you could obviously
the reason why other keys were more easily flawed is that a lot of the things that consume media or that did DRM in the past can't reliably have access to an internet and change themselves.
Yeah, this is for the web. It is internet, right?
Yep.
Anyway, the other problem with this is that, let's say, web browsers are the most important thing, right? In terms of software on your computer, you use it the most. It's the number one application of the internet is the web. So people are constantly, particularly security people, working on browsers. If browsers include DRM, you might accidentally, even though you're not trying to pirate any movies or anything, break the DRM while you're messing around with browsers, because that's what you do. Especially if you're a security investigator type person trying to find, security problems in the browser. There's going to be security problems in that DRM that could threaten your whole computer. Someone might use a flaw in the DRM system to just, turn your computer into, some kind of spam bot or whatever. So security researchers might have to mess around with this DRM, but doing so is against the law because it's DRM and it's not something else. So that's a problem.
Here's some quotes. While backers and developers of Firefox were hesitant implementing the protocol for ethical reasons and dependency on proprietary code, Firefox's implementation of it uses an open source sandbox to load the DRM modules, which are treated as plugins. So they have this convoluted way to get around some of the potentially thorny legal problems.
Yeah, but basically, the web is 100% open right now, and now this is basically saying, you know what? Some part of the web is not going to be open now.
Yep. But the previous alternative was some parts of the web, like in websites, would be black holes with Flash or something.
Sure.
So it's replacing non-standard black holes with standard widely implemented black holes.
Great.
It's hard to predict what specific impact this might have, because on one hand, it might make for an easier proliferation of more streaming services and things like that, but it could very easily be used for evil.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think you'll see consumer benefits in that you'll be able to just get like 4K surround sound Netflix streams right in the browser.
You'll see a consumer detriment in that only Windows and Macs will be able to be used to watch stuff forever after this point. Like, your Linux box ain't going to work with any of this stuff probably, unless you install proprietary closed source browsers, depending on your distro, by going out of band because they won't give them to you.
It's going to be one of those things where, like, the negative effects are all, even if they're significant, are in the tech world where normal people don't see or care, but tech people are going to be like, and it's going to suck ass.
Now, the hope will be if it expands into causing the further dangers beyond the expected dangers. Like, even normal people were afraid of the CBD TPA, and like we were able to stop that nonsense.
Yep.
So we got to make sure that the laws protecting these systems do not become worse than they already are, and we need right to repair and right to archive and right to study and right to research and all these other
if you
right
start
tos.
seeing shit like Wayback Machine can't archive any pages anymore because they're all DRMs.
Yeah.
Right? It's a problem.
So there's nothing for you out there to do. Like, there's no activism you can do on this.
Because it's already too late. The final draft is in, and you weren't rich enough to get a vote anyway.
All you can do is keep an eye on this. Like, be aware that this exists and pay attention to when it starts encroaching. That's literally all you can do, and figure out the line at which you start trying to get non-nerds to be angry about it, because no one's gonna care right now. The feast at the buffet of streaming is still too great. All right, I think we're good. That was good.
I hunger so much.
I ate a bunch of cookies. I'm not desperately hungry. I'm only normal hungry. I'm gonna do the thing. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Patreon. Yeah. See you guys. All right. Oh, two-factor. Oh, I haven't logged in a while. Give me a second. I'll do the Patreon thing. As a side note, you should all set up two-factor authentication on all your biz, including things you don't think you need to, like Patreon. Let's see. Patreon. Here we go. Boop, boop. Oh. Do. And Patreon manager. And the Patreon patrons for this episode of GeekNights are Rebecca Dunn, Nicholas Brandow, Alan Joyce, Heidi McNichol, Amanda Duchette, Great Job Emoji, MyStadia.com, William Eisenrose, Jeremy Miner, but I was going to Tosh Station to pick up some power converters, a genuine bona fide electrified 6-car monorail, The Terrible Secret of Space, 421 Creations. What? I mean, why are we out here in this canyon? Shervin Von Horror, Rare Laval, James David White, Rochelle Montanona, Superboy. I paid Fave $5 to make Rim say pickle. Sailor Vista, Matthew Smith, Don Schleich, Jartovish, and George Sean Yeager, Sam Cordery, Clinton Walton, Ren from New Zealand, Ryan Perrin, OJ Morphine Lobo, Brian Cedrone, the space-time vector of an African-European swallow carrying kiwis, Redacted Chris Midkiff, Chris Knox, Daniel Redmond, Sean Klein, Chris Reimer, and Thomas Hahn. I see that Patreon did something weird with their podcast feeds, so I have some content I haven't uploaded yet because I'm trying to figure out what happened there first. It wasn't just me; it was everything in Patreon, as far as I can see. Expect a whole bunch of rants and Rimley reviews and other stuff to be coming up in the near future. Now that I have a long break between conventions, and now I leave you with this.